Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar, Malicious Browser Notifications, the new phishing attack not blocked by your current cyber defense. This event is brought to you in partnership with KnowBe4. We've got a really cool event lined up for you, a hot topic. I'm excited about this one. I'm sure you are as well. Before we jump into it, just a few things to know about these webinars and today's event specifically. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media. I'll be serving as the moderator. We want this to be an educational event. Every time we do these events with Roger from KnowBe4, who I'll introduce you to in just a moment, we get a ton of questions. So get your questions in early. We'll be doing a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the event. You can use the questions tab. It's there in your audience console. I can call your attention to it that way. Of course, many of you have already found that tab. Wish us good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for those. We do appreciate those, but we also want your questions on today's topic. We have a couple of resources there as well that you should check out in the handouts tab. Specifically, the full slide deck is available for download in PDF, and also the KnowBe4 browser password inspector link is there, which Roger will discuss in his presentation, but you can check that out to sign up for a free test. And finally, at the end of the webinar today, we'll announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card. You must be present on the live event to be eligible, and you can find the full price terms and conditions in the handouts tab. And then new for this year, we've started doing our best question prize. Every question you enter today, as long as you meet the prize terms and conditions, of course, will enter you for the $50 Amazon gift card as well. And so with that, I'm excited now to introduce you to today's expert presenter, Mr. Roger Grimes, data-driven defense evangelist at KnowBe4. Roger, it's great to have you. Take it away.
Thanks, David, and thanks everybody for showing on up. Let me get the slides here. Again, if you haven't met me before, I'm Roger Grimes. I've been doing computer security for over 34 years now, earned all these gray hairs, and I've written 12 books and over 1,100 magazine articles on it. There are some of my books. My latest one is Hacking Multi-Factor Authentication. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest security awareness training vendor. We, try to help people teach other people not to get phished and socially engineered. And I truly love working for KnowBe4. But today we're going to talk all about desktop and browser notifications. I'm going to teach you about the protocols, how it was used when it was invented, how it's used maliciously, and how you can protect yourself and others against malicious notifications. But really the general concept of what malicious browser notifications exploit is something called transitive trust. Transitive trust is this idea that if A trusts B and B trusts C, then A must trust C. Malware writers and phishers have forever exploited this trust because through banner ads and other things where you'll be going to a website you trust and has some banner ad, and that banner ad just happens to have some malware in it. A lot of times even it comes from legitimate companies. Like some legitimate company will ask their marketing team, hey, we want to do this new big rollout on the web, and get a lot of people, and the company's like, oh, we want to have like 100,000 people come to our website for this new product rollout. They ask their marketing team, can you do that? Typically, most marketing teams inside of a company don't have that type of expertise, so they reach out to some outside web marketing firm that they trust, and the web firm will go, yeah, we can do that. We can drive 100,000 people to your website with banner ads or something like that. Sometimes what will happen is that outside firm then subcontracts to another company. Is like, yeah, we can promise you 1 million hits, and they don't realize that what that particular vendor does is use malicious banner ads or malware advertising, or what we call adware, to push people's computers to visit that website that wouldn't normally go there. They're certainly not active, engaged customers, that are going to be responsive to a product. But nobody in there really knows, that that's going on until they get to that, except for that last dodgy vendor. And then a lot of times they'll get found out, or it it will become apparent that there's some type of maliciousness going on. Although sometimes it can even be where, people have banner ads, and a phishing group will pose as a legitimate company, go, hey, we'd like to buy an ad on your website, a banner ad. They give an example of that banner ad. It's like this, normal looking banner ad trying to sell something. But what the website doesn't know is at the last second that legitimate banner ad is switched out for malicious content, some type of malicious JavaScript or something like that. So you always, have these lowest common denominators where, these malicious banner ads or malicious companies that are posing as legitimate companies, and they end up getting, access to potential victims on legitimate websites. So it's very, very common today for someone to go to a website that they, trust and go to all the time, and then for, their particular session, it just happens to be displaying some type of malicious JavaScript malware or something like that. First time I ever saw this transitive trust attack, I remember, was there was this software. There's a Java applet, if that's going way back a couple decades ago, where anybody's website could download a counter. This counter is, every time someone visits your website, it would update, from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And so this one company, I put that in quotation marks, offered this free counter that anybody could download and use. And it was a nice looking counter, and it worked and did what it was supposed to do. The only thing is that the developer said, you can use this counter for free, but you have to keep this link. And the link said, powered by cyber technologies or something like that. It looked like a very harmless link, and everybody downloaded, tens of thousands of websites downloaded and used that website page counter. But then one day, like 6 months or a year into that counter, all of a sudden the link, instead of it, before, the link that was in that counter just pointed to something innocuous, powered by cyber technology or whatever, but they switched it out with a malicious JavaScript on the fly. So that every website, tens of thousands of websites, all of a sudden had this malware being executed on their, on their web page, and they didn't realize they'd been tricked, into downloading a quote unquote, malicious counter. They didn't know they were doing it. They didn't know they'd been duped, but it didn't change the fact that all of a sudden, hackers and malware had all this access to all these websites. And today, many, many websites, your biggest websites, often have malware and malicious things executing on it that they don't know about. This was kind of shocking to me, but at the last Black Hat I attended in person, it was Black Hat or RSA, I can't remember which. Maybe it was RSA conference. There was a company there called the Media Trust, and what they told me was that 50 to 90% of all the client-side executing code on a major website is coming from third parties and not the website that you're going to. There's all these counters and traffic measurers and banner ads. So you think you're going to your favorite news site, your banking website. Well, most of the content that's being displayed on your screen doesn't come actually from that company. It's third-party code from other places and advertisers and things like that. And a lot of times malware can get inserted in there that the third party doesn't even know about. And this kind of blew me away that, most major websites have no clue about what's being executed on their websites. I thought that was crazy when the Media Trust told me this, but I actually interviewed some web site teams of some major websites, and they're like, yeah, of course. There's such complexity. And I don't know if you've ever put in like a browser proxy tool that shows you what's being downloaded from a website. It really is like dozens to 100 things, content coming from all over the place. And really, again, the website that's involved really doesn't know everything. Like they just don't have an inventory. I thought they know for sure everything is being executed on their websites, but they don't. And any of that can be maliciously modified, either intentionally or hacked, so that it shows and gives malicious content. And there's companies like the Media Trust that I met at RSA or Black Hat that literally other companies hire them to monitor their websites. And let me say, these are major websites that we go to all the time that have the Media Trust monitor their websites to let them know when they're accidentally pushing out malware. And that was just an amazing thing to me about this, how bad the transitive trust issue is. And hackers and malware writers have been abusing this transitive trust for years, again, with banner ads and WordPress plugins and rogue Java applets and all kinds of code snippets and things like that. They even, that example I had of the Java applet where it was the counter, that's called website well poisoning, or well poisoning is the better term for it. But that's where these malicious people poison the well of they put in what everybody thinks is a good admin console or a good counter or whatever, and tens of thousands of people download it and use it, and it works well for months or years. I was like, oh, you got to try this new admin add-in, it's great, everybody should get it, you need to get this WordPress plugin. But it turns out that it either has a hole, and it not only has a hole that can be exploited by malicious people, or it was created from the very, very beginning to be malicious. And again, it happens all the time. So what's different about it is what I talk about today is they're starting to abuse browser and desktop notification mechanisms. So matter of fact, Google says that abusive notification prompts are a top user complaint, is one of the top user complaints they receive about Google Chrome. So it's a big, big deal. So let's start out with water notifications in the first place. They're officially known as either browser or desktop notifications. You may hear the term called push notifications because it's very related, but it allows messages to be sent to a user outside of the application or tab where they initially approved it. So in every case, the user has to approve the first instance. You'll get this thing that says, can I show you an ad? Yes or no, allow, block, or something like that. This is what some of them look like. Most of them are allow, block, or allow. Some of them will say like cancel and allow, yes or no. Most of the time it's allow, block, but you can see there's block and allow, or cancel and allow. They can be slightly different, but you're visiting a website like Facebook or Page Six or Newsweek or Fox News, or even like I've got an example there of the application Slack. And that application is like, hey, Slack is like, I need your permission to enable desktop notifications, allow or block. So whatever website you're visiting, whatever application you're using, it has to initially ask you, can I show you notifications? And you're essentially saying yes or no. And if you allow it, then it's going to be able to show you future notifications. If you said no, not only can it not show you notifications, but it can't even ask you again. If you just click on the X and close it, it can bug you the next time you go to the website. We'll talk more about that. But again, every website and application that uses browser desktop notifications has to ask your permission, the end user. It's tracked on a per user basis, and you can allow it, you can block it, deny it, or the default is if you just hit X, it just means it can ask you again. But once you allow it or grant it, then it's going to be able to show you future notifications. And the big key is that these notifications, you don't have to be back on the website. You don't have to be using the app. It gets unattached from the website or the application and just will be shown in some mechanism on your desktop. So again, it can many times be shown over different applications or some type of general reminder shown. In Windows 10, you'll see this little like message balloon notification. If there's no notification messages waiting, it's blank. If you have notification messages waiting, you'll get this like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the number count is of messages you haven't read. And you can click on them and see what they are, and it will tell you, it'll give you the different notifications from the different businesses, and you can clear out all notifications at once, so you can read them all at once, or read some and clear out some and delete some and that sort of stuff. It's based upon an API called the Notification Application Programming Interface API. Back in the early days of browsing, so this would be late 1980s, early 1990s, if a program or an application wanted to send you a desktop notification message, they each had kind of their own way of doing it. Most of the time they were using JavaScript to try to do it. There was even in 2009, there was a standard called the JavaScript Desktop Notification API. That eventually became what the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, they're the ones that kind of determine the HTML, web, WW web standards. they updated the API that used to be called JavaScript Desktop Notification, renamed it the Notification API. There's even a separate API called Push Notification, which is sometimes merged in with the Notification API by a lot of people, but it got introduced as part of their HTML5 update in 2014. So what we know as notifications today, been around since at least 2009, really got a big push in 2014, but it just started to be abused a lot more in 2019. That's the big key. So they've been around a while, going on 8 years or longer, but it's now starting to be abused. In order for the notification API to work, the browser and/or operating system must support it to allow it. Although most most common desktops support it today. Apple and Google Chrome and Windows and Linux support it, and it's supported on most of the major browsers, including Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome and Apple Safari. Although desktop only, not on the cell phone. And Opera and Mozilla Firefox, but not Internet Explorer, because of course that's being deprecated anyways. And different, sometimes the desktop versions versus the mobile versions have different support, feature sets. It actually even became an official Internet RFC request for comment called RFC 8030. If you're not sure about what RFCs are, they're kind of where the official Internet standards go to be reviewed and are accepted. So, when we talk about HTML or SMTP or whatever it is, those are RFCs where the internet is like, yep, that's an official standard. A lot of stuff gets pushed out as an RFC that never gets accepted, but many of them are. If it's an internet standard, it was an RFC at one point or multiple RFCs. Well, the notification API got pushed out as part of RFC 8030, so you'll see that. You'll hear people talk about 8030 messages and stuff like that. That got created in December 2016. And it used to be, it's kind of interesting, notification pushes used to get pushed over TCP port 1001, but now they all use 443, so they're all pushed over HTTPS now. The first browser versions that supported notification basics, Chrome version 22 and Edge 14 and so on and so on. Basically, all the major browsers support most of the features, although not all the features, notification features, are supported by all browsers. For example, Safari doesn't support opening new browser windows, but the other browsers do. We'll talk more about that. In developer speak, a notification instance is known as a service worker. That comes from its JavaScript. So most notifications are done using JavaScript. You can use any scripting language, but everyone I've ever seen just uses JavaScript. And in JavaScript development, they call these instances service workers. And probably what's pretty big here is know that any notification instance service worker can update themselves. So once they ask for your permission, hey, allow me to notify you, once you say yes, they can update themselves. They can install other service workers. They can change what they do, what they display. They can even modify network content on pages that you're viewing, and they don't need your permission for future possible action. So be careful of giving that initial trust. Once you say allow and grant them permission, a service worker thread instance can do whatever is capable in the JavaScript language, in the notification API, in the implementation of that browser or desktop. So again, they can do a lot of stuff, and we'll talk about what they do. But I love one of these descriptions here. This comes out of the Google JavaScript developer development language on service worker. A service worker is a JavaScript file that runs separately from the main browser thread, intercepting network requests, caching and retrieving resources from the cache, and delivering push messages. A service worker must be registered before you even get that prompt allow or cancel or allow or block. It has to be registered. And that's because if you say no, block it, it actually puts in a database or in your browser or in your registry that you block that particular service worker instance from being able to notify you, and it will not be able to ask you again. So they always get registered before they ask you the allow or block notice. Then if you say yes, it can get installed and then activated at will by different browser tabs in applications. They can display a lot more than just text. Early on, back in 2009, they just did text, and then it got expanded to do icons, emoticons, badges. Then they allow you to put a multimedia mime content, they call it, and then URL links. Soon as I saw notifications were allowing website universal, uniform resource locator links, URL links, I knew that it was going to be game on, because anytime that now they can push you any URL, not ones even related to itself. It can be a completely different URL. So they can push any pictures and any content and any URL to you. They can claim that they're pushing a program to you or a PDF, and it's not really a PDF. Like, here, download the ebook. It can be anything there. You don't know what you're going to get in these. All these notifications always have these actions, allow or block, or whatever the buttons are. You can have more than 2 buttons, but a lot of the browsers and desktops only limit to 2 buttons at a time. And those labels can really say anything. So allow, deny, yes, no. They can even be fake. They can even point to, it can say cancel, but when you click on it, it really allows it. Although the first notification that they ask you allow or block, that first one, like, can I show you a notification? Those are somewhat hard coded, and I've never seen them faked. I've never seen it where you said canceled and installed it instead. This is what the JavaScript code could look like. This is like a pseudocode representation of the JavaScript under one of those buttons. Very simple. Most of them are many hundreds of lines long, but you can see, like, it says new message from vendor, and then if you click on this button, do this, and if you click on that button, do this. They could easily, if you allowed one to be installed, could say, important alert from Microsoft Corporation, and if you click here, go open this bad URL, and if you click here, go open that bad URL. So you can have different buttons and different display messages, and the actions behind them can do different things. They don't, other than that first allow or block. After that, any button they show you can really be called anything and do anything. You don't know what it's going to do, but the things they allow you, a notification can do, it can vibrate mobile devices, send sounds, display alerts, can use Unicode characters. Unicode characters are basically all the different character sets of different languages around the world. Browsers and URLs use Unicode, but it allows you to do what's called puny or punycode attacks. You can have a Cyrillic looking A that looks like a Latin A, and so you think you're going to like apple.com, but really you're going somewhere completely different. So there's different types of attacks because notification API supports Unicode characters. Someone could put a character that's from another language that looks like your language and really send you somewhere else than where you think you're going. Listen to this. Notifications can open, delete, or archive email. So you click a button and then all of a sudden open, deletes, or archives emails. They can initiate dialing telephone numbers. They can require that you do something like click on OK, and they can have a different action based upon whether you click it versus close the box, or even if there's an error happens, they can have a different action for that called on error events. And the biggest one is that they can open new browser windows at predetermined URLs. That's really the big risk. I like what this is, again, comes from the notification API developers manual on Google. The interesting thing is that the actions don't have to open a new window. They can perform general application interactions without creating a user interface. So they can do it invisibly, silently. For example, a user could like or delete a social media post that would perform an action on the user's local data and then synchronize it with the cloud without opening a user interface. So, you click a button, and then again, what happens because you clicked on that button, you don't really know unless you look at the code or something like that. If you're interested in testing and seeing how notification API works, here's 4 links you can go to that allow you to test and set up your own notification API test. It's actually pretty cool to play with them and see how they work and what they do. The thing you remember is that notification APIs are mostly used by legitimate websites. Applications like Slack and things like that are trying to use notifications to send you messages. I think I hardly go to a website today that doesn't ask me to allow notifications. I mean, it's getting more and more and more. The problem is that there's many legitimate organizations that buy and sell access to other sites and applications notifications. So there's this, let me say that again. So you say allow, you go to some website and say allow notifications because you like this website and you want to get notifications. That site can turn around and sell the list of users that have notification enabled on their website to other people, which of course could be the scammers or malware writers that then sell that. So there's these push notification networks. Here's like the top 20 right here, their names. And again, most of these I assume are legitimate. So these push networks, again, they talk website people into giving them the ability to post on their notification thread. So the website, you've got, websites, most websites don't make a lot of money. They're not making a lot of money off their customers, but if they, get their customers to allow notifications, they can actually sell that notification access to a push network that then sells it as advertising or even a malware channel to push malware to other people. So not all of these notification push networks are legitimate, but this is here's one particular push notification network that monetizes. They're like, hey, monetize your push subscriptions our way. Worldwide segmented notifications, which actually convert. Click here, join us. Highest push notification payout rates for website owners, small publishers, and high volume websites. Let's start working together and pushing that revenue. So again, it's kind of like the banner ad model where, hey, you got this website, let us push banner ads. Now the thing is, hey, you've got people that are allowing notifications. Why don't you let us do some push note? We'll pay you for the ability to push content to your people. So sometimes that can be, used maliciously. So, here again is an example of how they can be used maliciously. That's pretty common. So you have this malware group or push network that poses as this 100% legitimate vendor asking some website, can we allow our code to be executed when your users allow notifications? And at first, everything seems all legit. They're just getting like advertisements or content maybe related to the website. But later on, the push notification network switches out harmless code for malicious code. When that happens, you usually start having customers complain, and the vendor will eventually check into it, the website that allowed it in the first place. A lot of times, they'll have code that says they'll have the IP address of the vendors, of the websites that they're running on, and say if anybody from these defined IP addresses comes to visit, show them a normal ad. So a lot of times when the victims start complaining to the websites go to check it out and go, I don't know what you're talking about. It's just, an ad for shoes. It's not malware. So it usually takes a lot of people complaining to where the vendor that's involved starts complaining to the push notification network people. And the push notification network, they're all, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't see the problem. And then eventually, enough time and enough complaints go by, they're like, oh, we see it. It was this rogue guy. We're so sorry. That guy doesn't work for us anymore. So they always claim it was this rogue person that got punished. And then it just seems to take forever to get rid of the bad code. And when you argue and you get it done, it just, seems to happen over and over again because that particular push notification network doesn't have morals. And, eventually you learn and you cut them off, but they're just spreading it around the world. There's lots of headlines over the last year, like from Brian Krebs. If you don't know Brian Krebs, he's a terrific cybersecurity reporter, longtime cybersecurity reporter. Anything he writes is gold. You can go to krebsonsecurity.com, but he published something last year about these deceptive marketers, right, using browser push notifications. And this other company called PC Risk published this great white paper about uncovering widespread push notification abuse in the wild. That is a really great white paper. I've got a link to it coming up later on, but that's a fantastic white paper. So what can they do? What can a malicious notification do? Well, they can do phishing, right? Phishing and social engineering. They can try to install malware in your computer. They can do bogus advertisements. They can track your activities and your IP address and things like that. They can redirect you to other websites you didn't intend to go to. And the maliciousness can be replaced on the fly as they want. And many of them do multiple bad things all at once. So the reason why it's particularly dangerous, the notifications, once approved, happen outside the application or browser where it was approved. It can even be displayed on a lock screen, which is just on Windows. This is disabled by default. On Apple, it's enabled by default that a push notification message can happen on a lock screen. That is just asking for someone to be phished badly. And again, they can do things like credential pushing. They can fake, an Apple login screen or a Windows logon screen and ask you to do a login. You put in your login name and password and it doesn't work, and you get a second prompt and you don't realize that one of them was just a fake prompt. The trick is once you say allow, the sky is the limit. It's only limited again by what the scripting language can do, what the browser and desktop allows it to do, which is really, there's a lot you can do with JavaScript. A lot of things. A really common malicious example, this is probably the most common abuse I see in the world, is they do the fake antivirus ads. So if you look at this, though, again, this used to be these fake antivirus notices could only come to you when you're in your browser. These come to you even when you're not in the browser. So I know people that have quit their browser, closed it all together, and there it is, the fake antivirus. So they haven't even opened up their browser. Click here to clean your system, and really it's just going to some type of malware. This one, let me go back. This one here is a little bit more devious in a way. It actually, it says, oh, your PC's infected. It's infected with 5 viruses and all this stuff. When I click through it, I sold this from Brian Krebs, but I've seen this one on my own laptop a bunch. It actually pushes me to a real download of Norton Security, where I can buy Norton Security. So it really is this fake adware claiming that you're infected, and it leads you to buying a download of, I think it's a 5-user version of Norton Security, the one I saw. So a very expensive subscription. And my wife once called and said, hey, I thought we had antivirus enabled on my laptop, and it was a new laptop. And it was, and we still had a year or 2 left on the subscription, but we're getting one of these notification fake messages, saying that, oh, we're infected with the virus, so look out. So this is an interesting one, because it's not going to fake malware. It's a fake message that takes you to a real software program. They just overcharge you for it. And I'm sure if we could complain to Norton Security about, hey, you've got these fake advertisers, they would try their best to, shut them down, but they're appearing everywhere, and they break into websites to set up these fake selling of real antivirus software. It's kind of all convoluted. Here's another one I took from Malware Bytes, where this person is being told that their system's got some unusual activity. Windows support alert: you've been blocked. You better call this number, the Windows Security toll-free hotline. When you call that, they're going to try to talk you into some fake antiviruses. And notice they're giving you that allow or deny prompt again. Allow it to download multiple files, allow or block. And if you download that, you're getting malware, at the very least pestware. Here's another really common one I've seen. I'll show you on another website as well, but there's these fake, oh, you need to click here and allow this thing to run so you can watch a video. So somebody on Facebook, sends you a link, or your friend's Facebook account has been compromised, but it sends you to this fake video and it's like, hey, click here to allow. But notice that the website is telling them, if you want to watch this video, you must click allow. Can't play this video till you click the allow button. So they're trying to trick people into doing that initial notification. And here's an additional website. This is one I went to. I'd seen, got spammed or phished on, but it was livemovies123.info. It was a bad, bogus domain. If you go there today, it doesn't work. But again, they're doing that. Hey, you can't play this video that you want to display, so you've got to click allow. And once you click that allow, remember that service worker thread can then do anything it wants to do, including try to get you to install malware. Here's another example where I got this from Bleeping Computer, but this is, it's kind of interesting. This one says, press allow to verify that you're not a robot. So here they are faking to be one of those captchas, where you have to click to prove that you're not a robot. Well, this has nothing to do with a captcha. This is a browser notification. Notice here, human verification. All they want you to do is click and allow, because once you got that, you start getting those notification prompts that are going to try to get you to install malware. So what are your defenses against these malicious browser notifications? Well, first of all, just realize that most of these are not well detected by antivirus. They don't know what is or isn't a malicious browser or desktop notification. So the method of it being abused just started to be abused in 2019. Most antiviruses products and most endpoint detection response software programs do not know to look for these. They don't know which ones that you've allowed are good and which ones you've allowed are bad. There's no easy way to review or fix the ones, that you have. There's no way to say, show me all the allowed browser notifications across my environment. You'd have to write custom code to find something like that, and it would be different per desktop OS version and different for different browsers. The browser notification people do dynamic DNS use. So, if you were to go tell Semantic, hey, this website's selling a bogus subscription of your real product, they're not a good guy, even though they're selling your product. They're across tens of thousands of domains every day, and every time a domain gets shut down, they're just appearing on 9,000 other domains. And even the purveyors of notification pushing may say, hey, the customer allowed this. We said allow or block, and they said allow. We're not doing anything wrong. But just in general, malicious desktop and browser notifications are evading the antivirus software groups. There are some software programs, AV software programs, that are starting to take notice of malicious browser notifications, like Malwarebytes. But it really, I can't tell you how well or how good or how bad they look, but I can tell you this, that none of them really have a great handle on it, and some of them don't look at all. And if they don't look at all, if your antivirus, that's the question I would ask. I would ask your antivirus vendor, do you look? Can you detect malicious browser notifications? And keep in mind that these malicious browser notifications, it's not like you can, you can't beat phishing by whether someone's dumb or smart, right? Anybody can be phished. There is a Nobel quantum physics prize winner a couple years ago that got phished out of $1 million. Very smart guy, but he didn't know he's being phished, and he lost $1 million. And it was interesting. He was so convinced that he was going to get money for giving away money that his children had to go to court and take away his ability to manage his own funds because he was getting ready to give away another $1 million. But just know that how you beat phishing is by making people aware of different types of phishing attacks, such as these malicious browser notifications. And when we're trying to defeat phishing, you want to create the best defense in-depth policies, technical controls, and training you can to prevent it from happening in the first place. So you want to create policies that say things like, never allow, always say block, on malicious browser notifications. Never click on an unexpected file attachment. We will never give your password and request to an email. You create the best policies you can to try to diminish the chances that a social engineering scenario will be successful. Then you implement the best technical controls you can, your anti-malware software, your anti-spam, anti-phishing, content filtering, secure configurations, and things like that. Anything you can do to stop, phishing from getting to someone's desktop, but not only just an email or on the web. Now you've got to look at these malicious browser notification avenues, and then training people. Like, if people don't know that these browser notifications are a way into their, way to trick them, they, I would say before I knew a lot about browser notifications, I'd say allow every now and then on a website that I liked. Now I pretty much deny them all except for maybe Slack, because I like the Slack notifications. But so, your first defense against malicious notifications is education, just telling people what they're about, having people review and remove their unneeded existing notifications on both their desktop and their browser. You have to check in both places. And tell people, not to allow them unless they really think they should. You can configure desktops and browsers to reject all notifications by default. Call your antivirus endpoint detection response vendor. Find out if they do they check for malicious browser notifications. Make sure you're running the latest browser versions, because every browser version gets updated, has more security fixes in it, and all of them, including especially Google Chrome and Edge, seem to handle malicious browser notifications better each and every time. And then report notification scam domains to Google and Microsoft. If not the vendor like Semantic was involved in that one I showed you. But just know you can turn them off. You can enable or disable them globally in a browser or the operating system. How you do it depends on the browser and the operating system. But a lot of times, like, you'll be in a browser and you'll be going to some site that was going to try to notify you. If you see when a website's trying to go, hey, do you want to allow notifications for this website, allow or block? If you look up in the URL bar to the right, there's almost always some type of like balloon pop-up that if you click on it, that little bell pop-up, that if you click on it will allow you to manage the notifications for applications, for the browser, or on a globally or on a per site basis. That's something to look into. So you can disable, you can allow or disallow them globally in your browser or on a per site basis. Here it is where I'm in Microsoft Edge. You got to go to Microsoft Edge and then settings and then cookies and site permissions. That's a weird one. If you're trying to find where notifications are enabled or disabled, it's under cookies, under where you go for your cookies and site permissions. Then you'll find a section called notifications. And again, you can say, in this case, ask before allowing, or quiet notification request. If you say quiet notification request, you will not get any, will not see any at all, which is kind of nice. So that's that's a big one. If you disable the ask before sending a notification, disable that, it will globally block all notifications, all future notifications. And you can even, if you can quiet notification requests, so they cannot interrupt you or put the little balloon thing, although it will still allow it to put like the little tiny balloon thing where it counts up from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, but it can't pop it over the desktop. And you can block them, you can allow and block them on a per site basis. So here's an example of different ones that have been allowed, different websites. Again, notice this port 443, and these are the ones that I have allowed. And then, like, at one point, maybe I'm like, what's that DAON? I can go remove that. And once you remove it again, that's different. When you remove it, then it can ask you again if you go there. But if I edit and block it, it will not ask me again. So just know removing it may not be what you want to do. You may want to edit it and block it instead of allow it. Because again, if you remove it, it can always ask you again. If you edit and block it, it can't even ask you, much less show it. And again, here's other ones that show the ones that I blocked there. And notice I got the DAON on there now that's blocked. I went through my list and went, you know what, I don't want to see these. I want to block these instead. And you can always delete them so that they can ask again, or you can allow them. But again, you're seeing what you allowed or blocked. If you remove it from a block, it can bug you again. So keep that in mind. And again, here's ones that have been allowed. Also know that if you allow or block something, you may have to restart the browser or at least the tab. And then, and again, you can do it on a per site or per browser basis. Here's another example where I'm in Google Chrome. Those other examples were on Microsoft Edge, but here I am in Google Chrome. You go under Sites and Content, and then they have a section called Notifications. And again, you can globally allow or disallow notifications in Chrome, or do it on a per site basis. In this example, it's being enabled or disabled globally. But I could also do it do it globally. Here it is, an example of me enabling or disabling it globally in Apple Safari. Not a lot of options there. Apple, in general, Apples tend to have less options, less security options, and the same thing here. You can see which websites you allow to do it, or if you, where it says here, allow websites to ask for your permission to send notifications. If you unenable that, then you will not get prompted with any of these desktop browser notifications. You can do them on an OS level, so you have to do them on an OS and or a browser notification basis. Although if I disable them in the OS, it will disable them in the browser, but when I disable them in the OS, it disables them across all applications. And in this case, if you look in this example here, if you look at one of the first questions under notifications, get notifications from app and other senders, on or off. So you can turn it off. You can even enable whether or not you're going to show notifications on a lock screen, whether you're going to see reminders and incoming voice over IP calls on the lock screen, or allow notifications to play sounds, and so on and so on. So you have a lot more versatility in the Windows OS than you do in an Apple OS. But then underneath that, so this is the This is the OS notification setting, and the one above was the global, but now below there's the different applications. Like there's Microsoft Edge. So if I can actually disallow it on other things like Dell Support Assist or Focus Assist or whatever, and still allow it on Edge. But if I disable it on Edge, that means any of the notifications that would come from any of the websites in Edge will be turned off or allowed on. So keep this in mind. You enable and disable things in browsers, and each browser has its own settings and it's on a per user basis of what users will allow, but it can also be configured on an operating system basis. And under that, each browser is just a single application that will be allowed or denied on a per basis there. And again, here's some examples of different applications. Like I've got Chrome off. Maybe I could have Microsoft Edge on and Chrome off, or Chrome on and Microsoft Edge off. And again, you can do this in your cell phone as well on a per app basis. Here's an example of the settings on Microsoft Windows 10 where I have it's saying that I'm allowing these notifications to come in on Google Chrome. This is where they can be shown. I'm going to hide content when notifications are in a lock screen, so I've got that turned off. You don't want to allow notifications on a lock screen. That's just asking for trouble. Not even sure why that isn't allowed AP option, but it is. And then again, you can choose different options here, including where it is normally going to be shown. The notifications could be at the top or something like that, versus the side, which is where it would normally be. Here's configuring them in the Apple OS. Again, you can go under Safari here and then say, where is Safari going to show them? Where are these notifications? Notice the default is show notifications on a lock screen. I don't get it. That to me is just insane to allow that. But you can allow it to, that it doesn't show you any alerts at all, or they're banner alerts, or you see sounds and things like that. If you're interested in how to enable or disable these things on a per browser basis, I recommend that you can go to these links right here, and it will take you step by step. Although the key is when you're enabling or disabling notifications, and I recommend that you disable most of them or nearly all of them, if not all of them. I disable them all except for Slack for me. But you want to be able to enable or disable on both the OS and the browser basis. Remember, when you're in the OS, the browser is just one application, and you could have multiple applications, and there may be applications like Slack where you actually want notifications. Some browsers are starting to warn you if they recognize potentially malicious notifications. When I say some browsers, the only one I know right now is Google Chrome for sure. Chrome has this feature that if you go to a website that's been previously reported as potentially malicious, or they actually send their bots around, if you read this link here, they'll tell you, we don't block everything, but we do send bots around. And if it notes that this particular domain has been associated with malicious notifications, it will let you know that. It will actually say this site has been this site may be trying to trick you into allowing intrusive notifications. So notifications are blocked by default. I mean, that's pretty cool. Notice the little bell icon at the top there has a slash through it, but you could allow it if you wanted to allow notifications there, even though Google is telling you that it looks like an abuse of notification phishing thing, or you can continue to allow Google Chrome to block it. That's a really good thing. You can also report malicious notification domains to both Google and Microsoft. You report them in the same places where you report any bad link. Both of them, both Microsoft and Google, and you can also go to your antivirus vendor like Symantec or McAfee or whatever these things are called today, and they'll let you report these links. But you go there, you paste the URL, you tell them why you think it's a phishing violation, hit enter. And I do notice that by the next day, most of them are blocked when I report them here. I don't know if it's because of my individual report or that somebody else is, reporting them, but always good to do it. You can also try to automate resetting browsers. I don't know of a way to look and say, give me an inventory of every browser and OS notification that's allowed or denied, or what the settings are. I'm sure you could write your own scripting. You could do PowerShell scripting or Java, or Python scripting that goes across your workplaces, browsers, and desktop OSs, and find out who has what allowed or denied. But I don't know of any automated software that does it. I do know of automated software that allows you to allow or deny on a per app basis or desktop basis. So you can't get an inventory about what is or isn't blocked currently, but there are some automation settings of things where you can at least turn it off by default. Like if you're like, Roger, this thing's so bad, I definitely don't want these things executing in my environment. There are many third-party device management called MDM, mobile device management programs like Intune, that will allow you to enable and disable notification phishing, especially on mobile devices. Again, these notifications, now that you know about them, you'll see them on your browsers and your OS and on your cell phones all the time. I get bugged by almost on a daily basis to allow or block notifications on my cell phone. But you can use mobile device management software or something like Microsoft Intune. And if you're a Microsoft Active Directory environment, you can use group policy from Microsoft Edge. So you have to download the Microsoft Edge administrative templates. There's a link where you can download those Windows 10 admin templates there, and the instructions and how to use them and how to disable notifications. You can also do it using if you don't use group policies, you can do it through a Microsoft Windows Reg Edit. So you can do it through a reg edit, and there's kind of the registry edit settings there. Allow notifications, block notifications, or ask every time a site wants to show you a desktop notification. If I was you, I would block them by default if you could. Always good to block things when possible. And Windows 10, you can do it on a per OS or per browser basis again. There's this setting in the registry called push notifications toast enabled. So you can disable quote unquote toast, which is messages from being sent to you and sent through the operating system. In this case, there's the operating system versus Microsoft Edge. Before, it was enable or disabling and Microsoft Edge, but in this case, we're trying to do it on the operating system level. And there's what it kind of looks like if you go into gpedit.msc on Windows. So if you're looking at the local group policy, there's this remove notification and action center. So I would disable showing balloon notifications as toast, and then I would disable people being able to go in the action center and turn that on or off. So you want to do a little bit of both. In Chrome, I haven't been able to find an automated program that allows you to search or find or enable or disable notifications on the fly. Same thing with Apple, so I assume you have to write your own, although Google Chrome does have some information to help you with those settings. So really, what should you do? Share this presentation with your other coworkers or other computer security interested people, and start teaching your population just about browser notifications. I think if you want to review a couple of good links, I think the first link there, that push bug uncovering widespread push notification, that's like a 30 or 40 page white paper that I think is really incredible. It was a basis or part of a basis of this talk. And then Brian Krebs, that's a good single article. Brian Krebs always does a really good job of explaining the problem, not always how to solve it, although most of the time he's pretty good on that as well. I think those two things are great. I don't think the first one, that first link, is a white paper, and maybe you don't push that to everybody, but it doesn't hurt to push to your coworkers, your IT security coworkers. But the Brian Krebs one, I think, could be pushed to anyone. It's very got lots of pictures and tells you how it's abused and that sort of stuff. Or send the PDF of my presentation that you've downloaded. Of course, at Know Before, we're big believers in security awareness training. We believe that you should always train everyone, yourself and all your employees. You should give them training at least once a month. Everybody should go through longer training, like 15 to 30 minutes of cybersecurity training each year when hired, and then each year thereafter. After that, they should get short training, at least once a month, and then get simulated phishing tests to see how well they're taking that training in, and we do know our customers that do what I just said, which is do training at least once a month and do simulated phish testing at least once a month, that they usually are able to decrease their phish prone rate. That's the percentage of people in their company that will click on a phishing attack, from almost 38% to down below 5% in less than a year. So with that, I always talk a lot. If we don't get to your questions today, although I think we have some time for some questions, if I don't get to your questions today, you can email me at rogerg@knowbefore.com, and feel free to follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. But with that, David, do we have any questions?
Do we have any questions? Absolutely. We've got a ton of questions, Roger. Let's see. The only question I think is where to start. First one, I guess I'll just start at the top, and that's from Paul, who's asking, are there any notification exceptions that should, as a rule, be permitted, or is it just a blanket ban the best policy on notifications?
That's a great question, and I think every company has to make its own decisions. When in doubt, I think block all of them. But there are some cases like, my company uses Slack, where if they wanted to allow them, they could. And let me say that we don't block Slack by default. We don't allow or block. We allow people to make their choice there. But so that's a case where we wouldn't want to block it across the OS completely. We'd want to, but I would want to block it in Edge and Chrome. But there absolutely could be essential services that your company is using through a browser. So you want to be careful. I'm kind of a big believer. Most people don't know what they're doing with most browser notifications and OS notifications, so you can just block it. But there are instances and applications and websites that your company could absolutely use that has to have the notification enabled. So you have to look at it on a per site basis, per app basis.
Excellent. Great advice. Luke is asking, for you personally, do you always use the same browser for your personal browsing? And if so, do you mind sharing what it is?
No, and I don't mind using what I use, but I use a combination of browsers. I have in different ones. So, Chrome and Edge, I think they're both fairly secure browsers, but I'm also a big believer. I love Opera, and I've used Firefox and Mozilla, and I've even, I used to use Maxithon for a long time, but it just depends. So on my desktop, I use both Chrome and Edge a whole lot, and then on my phones, I use Chrome and Opera. But there's a lot of good browsers out there. There's a lot of good browsers.
Excellent. And then, how effective are browser add-ins or extensions that block adware, website trackers, and similar intrusive methods?
It depends. I'm kind of like blocking notifications. I block most add-ins. I don't trust add-in vendors to be nearly as secure as the browsers. So, I mean, it's up to you. It's a risk decision. Security isn't binary. It's up to you. But there are so many more problems with add-in vendors not being secure enough. It's kind of like WordPress add-ins. WordPress must be 200 add-ins a year must be exploited through WordPress websites. WordPress itself, though, is a like the base WordPress platform is really, really secure. It's the add-ins that get abused. So the same thing, I think every week I'm reading about some add-in that's being abused, either has a hole in it or abused. Let me say, Microsoft Edge and Chrome and Safari and Opera and all that stuff, they always get bugs, but they get rapidly fixed, right? When they're found, they're patched, and you're fairly secure using those things. The add-ins, not so much. And then occasionally, a couple times a year, I read about an add-in that seems like it went out of its way to be malicious. Some trusted add-in that everybody was using. So I don't give a lot of trust. I don't use any add-ins, and I haven't for a lot of years, so I'm just too tired of being burned. But it's up to each person to decide which ones they want to use. I think it's a high risk, and I just can't trust them.
Excellent. Douglas is asking, I mean, you mentioned WordPress plugins there. Is there any way to know whether or not you can trust a particular WordPress plugin to know if it's doing something nefarious?
No, not really. And most of them aren't doing something nefarious. It's just that they have holes that get exploited most of the time, although you have it on both sides. If there is an easy way to tell whether code was trustworthy or not, we wouldn't have the problem of malware today. What I would say is that, if you tend to go with the bigger, more popular ones, there's some safety in numbers just because some add-in that is used by more people typically is going to be safer. But also, you want to know that the vendor is aggressively hunting for bugs and getting rid of bugs when they're reported to them. If they have like a bug bounty program, that's a good thing. Again, it's up to each person. I personally am very scared of plugins, and I don't want to say like WordPress plugins I'm not scared of per se, but I do. Even when I go to my my WordPress websites, I minimize the number of plugins that I use because I don't want to increase my risk. So I use one or two, and I don't go. I use a lot of the built-in WordPress tools instead. WordPress, anything from WordPress from Automatic, it's going to be fairly secure and trustworthy. Other third-party stuff could be, but you just got to trust it and make sure that do they use secure coding practices? Do they use security development lifecycle? Do they apply patches rapidly when they're reported? Do they have a bug bounty program? There's a lot of questions, but if you stick to the better, well-known ones, especially ones that you pay for, there's some safety there usually.
Okay. And so you may have answered this, but Henry's asking, is there a way to test a plugin before using it?
Not in most cases. And by the way, when I was talking about WordPress being good, I guess I should tell you I have a son that works for WordPress, which is I'm not plugging for them, but I know that they use very secure coding inside of there, so I have some insight into there. But I don't know of a way to test. It's not easy to test anybody's code. I guess you could run it through like a vulnerability scanner. If you could get a hold of the source code. A lot of times for the add-ins, you can get source code add-ins, and you can run that source code through a security checker. But I got to tell you, I've not seen it done well. Again, if someone had a way of telling what add-ins were secure or not secure, you'd be worth $1 million. That's a good question, good idea. I wait for you to develop it.
Great idea, Roger. We could do well with that. I'm afraid though we're running out of time in today's event slot here, and we've got a lot of questions still remaining. Roger, I know you recommend folks to email you directly. Is that right?
Yes, please, and I'll answer your question within 24 hours. RogerG@knowbefore.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone out there, for your excellent questions. Sorry we didn't have time to get to all of them, but we do appreciate them. Tons of good questions. Of course, I really appreciate, Roger, your excellent presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Glad to be here, and thanks everyone for showing up.
And thank you to KnowBe4 for supporting today's event. Don't forget about, in your handouts tab, there is Roger's slide deck in PDF. You can download that, and as Roger recommended, share that with your friends, associates, colleagues. Help them to better secure their browsers and prevent malicious phishing attacks. Also, check out the KnowBe4 browser password inspector. It's there in the handouts tab as well. It's a free tool that you can sign up for and try it out for yourself. Make sure that your passwords are secure. And then finally, I want to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card. That's going to Alan McClellan from Tennessee. Congratulations, Alan McClellan from Tennessee. And of course, for more information on the KnowBe4 phishing and phishing prevention solution, security awareness solution, check out knowbefore.com for more information. Thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar today. I hope you learned a lot, and have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.